Way back in 2019, the Giants converted Drew Pomeranz to a reliever in just a handful of outings, and teams ended up seeing so much that the Brewers were willing to give up Mauricio Dubón, who was a pretty solid prospect for a rental of Pomeranz. And all this time later, today, the Giants signed Drew Pomeranz. He is back with the team on a major league deal, and he's going to be in that bullpen starting tonight.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting Locked On Giants for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started is by discussing a substantial move by the Giants today. Like, I saw that the Dodgers had released Drew Pomeranz. I don't know what the exact terminology was with Drew Pomeranz and the Dodgers. I should really pull that up. But he was in the minors with the Dodgers, and they essentially let him go. And I saw that this morning. And then a couple hours later, I see that the Giants have signed Drew Pomeranz to a major league contract. And so Drew Pomeranz has just been an intriguing character. Yeah, Dodgers released Drew Pomeranz. So, he had opted out of a previous deal with the Dodgers in April before he re-signed. And then whether he triggered an opt-out this time or not is unknown. But the result is he'll head back to the open market. And that was put out at 9:40 Central Time today. And then the Giants signing, that's on MLBTradeRumors.com. And then the Giants signing Drew Pomeranz was at 3:05 Central Time. Well, I guess that's been updated because that was much earlier than that. So, so it's a long road back to the Giants for Drew Pomeranz, who, like I said in the open there, basically kind of made a career for himself in a Giants uniform by pitching like 3 or 4 times out of the bullpen and being overpowering with the Giants once he moved to that reliever role. So in 2019, he was on the Giants, and he made 17 starts and 21 total appearances. So it was like 4 relief appearances. And you just look at the numbers and you see a guy who had the strikeout stuff, but didn't necessarily put it all together as a starter. But then he went to the Brewers and pitched in 26 and a third innings. And his strikeout rate was 45%, which is just exceptional. He commanded the ball, only an 8% walk rate, had a 2.39 ERA, a 2.68 fielding independent pitching, a 2.14 expected fielding independent pitching. So the Brewers got everything they could have wanted out of Pomeranz from that trade, and he was, in fact, an impact reliever for them. And Pomeranz parlayed that into a hefty deal with the San Diego Padres, in which he was good when he was on the field, but he wasn't on the field very much. So he pitched in 2020 with the Padres and in 2021, and he had a 1.62 ERA in 44 and a third innings, but injuries set him back in a significant way. And so so he returns to the major league. So the Giants have signed him to a major league contract, the terms of which are unknown, but that means he goes straight onto the 26-man roster. The corresponding moves were that Mason Black was optioned to clear a spot on the 26-man roster. Black has just struggled pretty much every time He's pitched, and so it's not surprising. Just optioned, though. It's not like they're DFA'ing him. That's the beauty of a player who's just like a pure rookie and hasn't been and is in their first option year, is that you can ease them in, and if they're struggling, you send them down and you bring them back up at a later date. But they did need to clear a 40-man spot, and so the move they made was that they DFA'd catcherJakson Reetz, which I think makes sense. And they had sent Blake Sable to Double-A, I believe, and that maybe this allows them to put Sable back in Triple-A. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway, for Pomeranz, it's the first time he'll be back in the big league since 2021, and with the Padres at the time in 2021, he required flexor tendon surgery and repeatedly hit setbacks in his attempts to return to the mound in the following 2 years. This year, and I'm like quoting MLB trade rumors here, this year he signed a minor league deal with the Angels and threw 8 innings for them in spring training. He didn't make the opening day roster. He got released, and then he signed a new minor league deal with the Dodgers. And since signing with the Dodgers, he's been pitching for AAA Oklahoma City with a couple of interruptions. He opted out, re-signed, landed on the minor league injured list April 21st, returned from the IL a couple weeks ago, and he made 2 appearances since coming off the IL, striking out 7 batters in 3 scoreless innings. Overall, he's thrown 9 innings for Oklahoma City, and he's allowed 6 earned runs, but 4 came in 1 appearance. And since then, 2.25 ERA and a 48.3% strikeout rate, 3.4% walk rate. And so full circle, it's like here he is coming back, most recently dominating the way, in the minor leagues, of course, big caveat, but dominating in the same way that he kind of dominated in like 4 outings with the Giants, which again, that was enough for teams like the Brewers to look at and see and say, yeah, we're going to give up Dubón and all the years of team control that he comes with. He's still under team control, but for the Astros now. So you give up all that team control over a solid prospect that Dubón was. He wasn't like a top prospect, but just for Pomeranz as a rental. Pomeranz was only under team control for the remainder of the 2019 season. They also gave up, I believe it was Ray Black in that trade. And so anyway, this is just intriguing because, I think about Eric Miller and maybe that his spot on the roster becomes a little bit precarious because Miller, they used him as an opener the other day. He gave up a leadoff homer to Andrew McCutchen. He's had some good stretches, but he's also struggled at times. And so you start to look at the Taylor Rogers, Eric Miller kind of pairing of lefty relievers, and you're not necessarily getting the best of results out of either of those guys. Taylor Rogers and Eric Miller. So Rogers has a 2.19 ERA. So in a way, what am I talking about? No, I'm looking at Tyler Rogers. Whoops. Taylor Rogers, bear with me, has an ERA of 3.32. So again, what am I kind of talking about? But the peripheral's not as good, and he has allowed, the home run ball has been a bit of an issue for him. But overall, Taylor Rogers has been fine, if not super reliable, but nonetheless fine. And then Eric Miller, though, has an ERA of 4.56 with, walks being an issue, home runs. He's allowed about close to 2 home runs per 9 innings. It's a small sample. Home run rate doesn't stabilize really fast. And so lefty relief pitching has been kind of a weakness for the Giants. As if you're on YouTube, you can see there's a leaf blower going behind me. I do apologize for that, and you can probably hear it if you're just watching or listening. But we're doing what we can here. These guys have been here all day and making this a little bit difficult. But anyway, more about Pomeranz, but also Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball. Very unpopular, as commissioners usually are. But speaking about the automatic ball strike system, the ABS, robot strike zone, and how it is probably eventually coming to MLB. I'll explain when and how and what it's supposed to look like in just a minute and before we get into it. Today's episode is brought to you in part by our oh-so-good friends over at Ibotta. Spring has sprung, and that means spring cleaning, whether that means stocking up on cleaning supplies or swapping out your winter clothes for new spring clothes, make sure you're using Ibotta and get real cash back with every purchase. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop in a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands to get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, as promised, I want to kind of put a bow on Drew Pomeranz, but also get into this news about Rob Manfred. I mean, it's not news about Rob Manfred. News courtesy of Rob Manfred, talking about the automatic ball strike system, ABS, robot umps, all that stuff. This is a big deal because, if you watch this show, we talk about it a lot, the strike zone, and I've got a lot of thoughts. So thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, breaking down a 3-game series in Queens. Giants looking to carry that momentum from these 2 great wins that they had in Pittsburgh into their series in New York. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. And also a reminder, Postcast with Eric Engel after every game, including weekends. This show, we do it like the next day, but with Eric Engel on Postcast, check it out on YouTube under Locked On Sports San Francisco, and join the conversation for instant reaction right after the game, including weekends, including tonight. Hit the bell notification and you'll get notified when Eric goes live. And then that feed also shows up on the Locked On Giants podcast feed, just not on the Locked On Giants YouTube channel because it has its own dedicated YouTube channel for live shows. So anyway, just wanted to give you a heads up about that. That's been going on all season and will continue. And it's going to be Warriors and 49ers when they're in season as well. So anyway, like I said, putting a bow on Drew Pomeranz. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a risk, I guess, because he hasn't pitched in the major league since 2021. But at the same time, it's actually not really a risk because I'm certain that it's not a high guarantee that they're giving him. They're just giving him a spot in a major league bullpen, and he jumped at that when he's been pitching in the minor leagues and hasn't pitched in the major league since 2021. And so it's probably, close to a league minimum deal, something like that. But the Giants willing to give him a major league roster spot, and I don't know, maybe makes $1 million or $2 million or something, but like they need that lefty reliever help. And I am very intrigued. I mean, he was really, really dominant basically from the time the Giants moved him to the bullpen throughout until he got injured in 2021. And so if he's healthy and ready to go, and he just recently, I think, dominated, it was the River Cats, the Giants AAA affiliate, that he was dominating against recently. And the Giants were like, okay, and the Dodgers happened to release him right then and there. Yeah, his last 2 outings came against AAA Sacramento, and he went 3 innings, faced 10 batters, gave up 1 hit, struck out 7 out of 10 batters. That's a 70% strikeout rate. Actually, his last 4 outings came against the Giants, 2 on the road and 2 at home. 5 innings, 17 batters, 8 strikeouts. Okay, so it's more like a 50% strikeout rate. 2 hits allowed, no walks, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 1 wild pitch. But hey, what the heck, I'm intrigued, and he's in the bullpen, and I presume he's there tonight. It's possible they made the roster move, so I assume he's there in New York, ready to go tonight, and that's intriguing to me. So moving on, we're going to get into Rob Manfred, who says, this courtesy of MLB Trade Rumors, their headline here says, Manfred, ABS likely to arrive as challenge system in MLB, though likely not ready for 2025. And so I have thoughts. First of all, there's 2 parts to this. Number one is that not likely in 2025. Number 2 is that we're talking about the challenge system. And I'm going to explain why I actually think the challenge system is the right way to go. I could probably be convinced otherwise, but Manfred basically lays out all the points, and it's not just him talking. That's what I think is important, is that he's listening to players. And he says, MLB Trade Rumor says MLB has been trying out various methods in the minor leagues and the independent and in independent partner leagues for years now. And Manfred said there is a, quote, growing consensus, end quote, that players would prefer a challenge system as opposed to letting the ABS system take over completely. Quote, those who have played with it do have a strong preference for the challenge system over ABS calling every pitch. And that has certainly altered our thinking on where we might be headed. And so, end quote. And so he goes on to kind of explain why. And he said, I think the players feel that a catcher that frames is part of the art of the game. If, in fact, framing is no longer important, the kind of players that would occupy that position might be different than they are today. You could hypothesize a world where instead of a premium catcher who's focused on defense, the catching position becomes a more offensive player. That alters people's careers, so those are real, legitimate concerns that we need to think all the way through before we jump off that bridge, end quote. And so I totally agree with him. Just think of a player like Patrick Bailey, who, I have friends, in the industry who disagree strongly on this point and say you're rewarding a guy for basically fooling the umpire, right? And we don't do that on the bases, right? If you can somehow make it look like the guy's out and he's not or whatever, why do we care about this when it's the catcher position? It's just a skill, it's not like a skill at other spots. And then the other thing is there are so many pitches. There's hundreds, 200 plus pitches per game. And so every pitch is an opportunity to frame. And then I just think aesthetically, if you think about what that would look like if the catchers had to make no effort whatsoever to frame a pitch, I just wouldn't like the way that looks. And also, there are a lot of pitches that aren't high consequence, right? And so if the umpire calls it a strike or whatever, and it kind of, I don't know, there's also the entertainment factor of when I have been literally talking about this since I started podcasting with Adam Petke. Shout out if he's listening. He does sometimes. So since 2015 about the challenge system and how they do it in tennis. It's super fast. Those of you who've watched pro tennis, they've been doing it forever. And by the way, baseball now uses that same Hawkeye tracking system that tennis uses. It's the same thing. you see that replay of the pitch coming in and how close it is to touching any portion of the box, the strike zone edges, and it's super fast. And you see it in the minor leagues. It's fast. The hitter challenges, or a catcher can challenge, or I think the manager can challenge, one of the three. And like, it should be like a 5 to 10 second process where they just just like you see on TV, a replay of the pitch kind of tracking in, and then where does it, cross the threshold of the plate, and what did it touch any portion of the box? And then it can zoom in, just like in tennis, if it needs to zoom in really close and see, is any part of that baseball touching any part of that box? And if it is, it's a strike. If it's not, it's a ball. And then the call either stands or like is confirmed or is overturned, and it's done, and it's fast. And so it's not like they go to, like they don't have to dial up to New York to challenge a strike. It is not like that at all. It's super quick. It's like tennis, where they just raise their finger or whatever, and it's fast, and then it's done, and you move on. So I'm a fan of that. And I think taking away, like, the Giants have a big advantage right now. They have like the best framer in the game, essentially, or at least one of them, in Patrick Bailey. And so if you're talking about this coming in a couple years, and like, if you're a Giants fan who wants the team to win more than you want complete and utter fairness about the strike zone, then you have an advantage having Patrick Bailey. And then you can always challenge in a big situation if the umpire makes a mistake. But if it's not a big situation, maybe not worth challenging, and you're not going to get too upset because it's not a big situation. What's frustrating is when they do it in a big situation. Or if you're just certain the umpire is wrong, challenge anyway. And if you're right, you don't lose your challenge. So that's kind of the idea. So Manfred went on to say, the MLB trade rumor said, though the challenge system may be coming to the big leagues at some point, it doesn't seem like it will be next year. And then Manfred says, we still have some technical issues. I don't mean technology. I mean technical issues in terms of the operation of the system. We haven't made as much progress in the minor leagues this year as we hoped at this point. I think it's becoming more and more likely this will not be a go for 2025. One thing we did learn with the changes that we went through last year, like the shift restrictions and all that, and the pitch timer, is taking the extra time to make sure you have it right is definitely the best approach. I think we're going to see that, or use that same approach here. And there's also a note about issues related to whether the strike zone is determined by a player's height or by camera systems. And Manfred says, I'm not sure that anybody is wholly satisfied with either approach. We have not started those conversations with the Major League Baseball Players Association because we haven't settled on what we think about it. It's hard to have those conversations before you know what you're thinking. So at some point in this article that I kind of must have glossed over, he did mention the component that the challenge system is fun, like the fans find it entertaining, just like in tennis. And literally, if you're an everydayer way back to 2015, Adam and I on Covecast, when I say I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, that was the name of the show. And we literally talked about this exact thing, that the challenge system for tennis is fun. The fans get into it. It's exciting. It's quick. It's resolved fast. And I think eventually we're going to see that in baseball. And it's kind of unfortunate that it's not going to be probably next year. I wish they could iron it out by then. But as a lifelong fan who will remain one, I hope to see it as soon as possible, and that it's definitely, to me, going to make the game better. Just know they're not going to be calling New York on these. It's just in-house, like quick on the scoreboard, show a replay within 10 seconds, move on. Like, it's not going to slow down the game a little bit, but not by much. And in big situations, you avoid the umpire taking the bat out of somebody's hands. And I think that is ultimately what you want to do, is in big moments, you don't want the umpire determining the outcome of a game, essentially, or potentially the outcome of a game. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, we're going to turn our attention to the impact of Curt Casali, which we haven't talked about much. And they've lost one time since they re-signed this guy, and their record was so good when they had him in 2021 and 22. And then also some injury updates from the Giants. So we'll get into all of that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Now, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Right now, I'm on FanDuel.com/lockedon, and I can see the Minnesota Timberwolves are heavy favorites against the Dallas Mavericks tonight with a money line of minus 250 for the Timberwolves, point spread of -6 at minus 110 odds. But that minus 250, I would just be looking at what is the most lopsided thing here and placing that $5 bet. And with any winning $5 bet, you get 150 bonus bets at FanDuel.com/lockedon. So be sure to check it out for yourself. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, as promised, we're going to take a little look at Curt Casale's impact on the Giants. This is a mailbag question that inspired me to get to this. And then also the Giants put out some injury updates, which I think is relevant for sure because they've got so many injuries. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every day is on Monday, 3-game series in New York. This is a big one. Can the Giants keep their momentum going, try to get back over that 500 mark and maybe never look back? It's a big one. It's a big one. The Mets are struggling as a team overall, and they've still got talent on that team for sure, but the Giants are riding this wave of momentum from their wins in Pittsburgh, so we'll see what they can do. Remember, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So this was a mailbag question. It came from Lidar, who says, how much, in your opinion, did we not only take Curt Casale for granted, but also how much did he mean to our overall success in 2021? And so I'm tempted to pump the brakes a little bit on this as kind of confirmation bias or something, just because they've done well in their few games with him this season. I mean, I think that he was a big player for them. And what's crazy is I didn't actually, when you first asked this and I didn't get to it yet, I was going to say, I think he was, maybe we took it for granted somewhat, but a guy like Tom Murphy, who they signed to a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year club option, I know that he struggled. Guess who else struggled mightily in even way more plate appearances this year for the Giants? Matt Chapman. And then look what Matt Chapman has done recently. Give him enough time and track records play out. And I think the track record for Tom Murphy is that he's one of the best catchers in the game at crushing left-handed pitching. And so I am not giving up on Tom Murphy based on, probably like 30, 40 plate appearances that he's had this season, because he's in a part-time role, right? And 38 plate appearances, 13 games. Come on. I mean, that's just not. If you look at projection systems, they all have him as an above-average hitter. He's been an above-average hitter in his career. He's hit for a lot of power. The numbers against lefties are just kind of eye-popping. But he really did struggle with the Giants in those 13 games or whatever and 38 plate appearances, including defensively, where he was really bad. I mean, he according to FanGraphs, or just according to defensive runs saved, -5 in just 84 and 2/3 innings, -3 framing. What is this? StatCast fielding run value in runs above average. So cost them 3 runs defensively. Poor framer again this year. And defensive metrics like this are kind of not best taken in small samples. But for Curt Casale, he's been less of a hitter in his career, and I think more of a defender. And if I look, he's consistently been, StatCast kind of has him as a slightly negative defender, whereas defensive runs saved has him as a positive. So I'd have to look and break down like how much of this is framing, how much of this is blocking, how much of this is his arm, and then there's always intangibles with catchers as well. But what I was saying was I didn't realize what their record was. I forgot. I remember in 2021, their record was amazing no matter who was catching, right? And so that's part of it, is that they just won 107 games. So whether it was Posey or Casali, their record was going to be good because they won 107 games. But the Giants' record under Casali in games that he started is really, really good. It's something like 62-23 or just something ridiculous like that. And so to answer your question, how much did we take him for granted? I'm not sure that we did. I think that he made an impact, and you can definitely see it when you're comparing Casali to like Jackson Reetz, right? But I think Tom Murphy has the potential to be just as good, if not better, than Curt Casali in terms of making an impact, because you could really see him impact the game offensively, which you don't often get out of the catcher position. And in terms of our overall success in 2021, I mean, I think it had far more to do with guys like Buster Posey and Brandon Crawford versus a Curt Casali. And so anyway, as this leaf blower goes off outside, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, breaking down this 3-game series in New York. Don't have time to get to the injury updates because I can't go another leaf blower round. You don't need that. I don't need that. Nobody needs that. So we'll be back on Monday. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. If you want those injury updates, I'll retweet them on Twitter, so follow me there at Ben Kaspick. Like I said, Kaspick. Anyway, have a great weekend. Go Giants, big series. Can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.